Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Well, today I'll be talking to us about the results, the chapter 4 of your dissertation. Okay, for those of you writing your proposal, you wouldn't really be needing this particular section in your proposal because obviously you haven't collected data yet. Of course, you would have written your methodology chapter, and like we said previously, it will sound more like this is what the research method will be. However, when you're writing your dissertation, like you'd have seen in the previous video, your methodology chapter will be more in the past tense. This is actually what happened, and the results will be discussed in the subsequent chapter, and that's what we're going to focus on today. So let's get right to it. Hooray! And here we have it, the result or findings chapter. This chapter is very important, and I must include that it's like the let's say the brain of the entire work. So you've reviewed the literature, existing literature, and now you're going to tell us what you found. This is the chapter that really brings to the fore the uniqueness of your own work. Okay, so it's basically focused on the outcome of your study. You would have already done or written your methodology chapter, hopefully, and discussed how you went about collecting data. So the result chapter is basically the chapter where you tell us the findings, the result of your investigation. And here I'm assuming that you've done a primary research. If you've done a literature review, obviously there'll be a different way of going about it. So please do check out my video on that. But obviously, for a primary research, it's your work, and you need to present the data, whether it's qualitative or quantitative, and we'll look at both methods in a second. Okay, so it should reflect the purpose of your study. It's like a story, so there has to be connections. Your literature review, your conceptual framework, and your result findings should have certain correlations. So for example, if you're researching on gender in the banking sector, we're not expecting you to start talking about, say, something just like technology, for example, unless of course that's a theme that came through in the discussion with the women in the bank, as it were. So just be cautious that you're staying on topic. All right, and you need to tailor your answer to your research question. It should be clear, evident, and logically presented as well. Okay, so let's look at the different methods. All right. Great, so we've got a qualitative research. Now, you start off your chapter as usual with signposting what the chapter is about, and you could mention your research questions and objectives, or just say that you're going to, structure your work following those objectives and research questions. And then when you start off with the proper heading, you could also just mention it really clearly so your examiner or reader knows the particular objective you're referring to. Now, part of your sections, you should have the finding section that is based on demography. So the demographic information is about a sample. So for example, were there 20 men, 20 women, just discuss it. What were their maybe levels or age or whatever it is that was important for you when you were collecting your data. So you explain it there. And then you can go on to discuss the themes, codes, depending on, again, the kind of analysis that you've chosen or that you're using. Okay, so structure it either based on the themes, or you could do it based on your research questions or your research objectives. All right, what you need to know is that it's important to be very clear about what you're doing in terms of your analysis, and that should be connected to what you mentioned in your methodology chapter. So if in your methodology chapter, for example, you said you were going to do a thematic analysis, and then in your result chapter you're doing a content analysis, there's no correlation, so you need to kind of make corrections accordingly. So let's assume we're doing thematic analysis. You've found the different codes, and then you've come up with your different themes, and you want to structure your work based on your themes. You're free to do so. Alternatively, you could use your objectives and then discuss the themes that came through to actually achieve that particular objective. Now, you have to, for you to actually get here to this point of analyzing your themes, you would have transcribed and understood, your data. So whether you're doing thematic analysis, content analysis, grounded theory, template analysis, whatever it is you're doing, you have to ensure there is a consistency. And you should also use pseudonyms, use, as it were, fake names, letters, whatever you can, just to ensure that there is no direct connection to the actual participant. So instead of, if you say, for example, you interviewed CEOs, if you mention their first name, even people are bound to know who they are because they're quite popular, most people perhaps, but you want to use maybe a combination of letters or just to keep it confidential. Okay, now you could also include quotations from the participants, maybe just to buttress a point. Now it doesn't have to be overly long. Most institutions may allow you to include your transcription, or but basically it's the basic information. You will make sense of the information and then write it out. One thing you don't want to do is to write out what everybody has said or try to focus on each question. I see that quite a number of times, and I'm wondering, hold up, what's going on? No, it's not about telling us exactly what someone or a group of persons said for each question, but more so, I mean, that could come through, but you should do that in light of achieving your objective or discussing a particular theme. Okay, now that method where you discuss each question is a kind of market research method, which is not really an academic dissertation method. Now, it's possible that your institution may want you to do it that way, but in general, it's more about the theme or the objective. The market research kind of research is where, for example, you're reading a report and they ask a number of, maybe customers questions, and they wanted to know how many percentage said this and said that, and that kind of analysis. But that's, for business, but for academic purposes, this is usually the format. Okay, now for the qualitative study, you're free to start discussing. So when you talk about a theme, for example, you could talk about what others have said in the literature. Does it correspond to the literature? Why is yours different? Why is it similar? That kind of thing is very, it's allowed. Now, you could still have a different section. You could just discuss the result based on the themes that came through, and then you could have a section where you decide, okay, I'm going to discuss those themes based on my objectives. However you choose to structure it, you could have that conversation with your supervisor as well. Assume you already know, writing a dissertation, yes, it's majorly your work, but that guidance from your supervisor is key. So please do maximize it. And now for the quantitative research, it's slightly different. You'll see there are certain similarities for both. You need to be clear, your points have to be logical. You could also frame this based on the research objectives. Now, for quantitative research, you do more of numbers. Okay, statistical analysis, whether it's descriptive, you're just talking about percentages or mean and median and standard deviation, or you are actually testing hypotheses with t-test, ANOVA, correlations, regression. Whatever be the case, it has to be done statistically. Quantitative, the quantity, as the name implies. Okay, so don't forget to signpost as usual. Every, essay should have the right kind of structure there. Okay, so for this one, it has to be based on either your hypothesis or research question or your objectives. Yeah, we don't necessarily have themes here, and I wouldn't say you should do it based on the type of, statistical analysis. No, more of your objectives or hypothesis, that should be better. Yes, even with the qualitative, you can use, diagrams when necessary. For example, if you're talking about the gender or the age, you want to have a table in there or a chart, that's fine. But for quantitative research, you find more of these kind of diagrams and all. But what's important to note is you need to tell us something about this diagram. So don't put in a figure, a table without saying anything. All right, a brief explanation should suffice. Okay, now there are some key don'ts. I've already mentioned one. Please don't put in a, your diagram should be clear. Oh yes, it should be clear. If we can't see what the marks and signs are, then it has to be clear. and you need to discuss or just focus on the result in a result section, you have another section where you can then discuss your results, and that's a discussion section. For quantitative study is more, like this, is done like this, because with qualitative research, there is a tendency to, it's really qualitative, detailed words. There is a higher tendency that if you just go ahead and discuss the points, it will be more coherent. Okay? With quantitative, we want to just see what are the statistics and all, and then you can make sense of it later on. It's more of the best practice, really. So just bear that in mind and have a different discussion section or chapter. But of course, again, depending on your institution, your supervisor can advise in that regard. So, like I said, for the qualitative study, here you should not focus on what's giving answers of each question. So you asked 40 different questions in your survey. We're not looking to say, oh, from the questionnaire, question 1 was this, and then you don't really need to tell us what number that question was. What's important is the number of questions you had to ask to actually help you achieve your objective or to test your hypothesis, as the case may be. So just focus on that. So it's about analyzing the result, the data, making sense of it, and giving us the information. Yeah? Okay. All right. So again, don't forget, don't include a figure without any explanations. So that's it in less than 15 minutes. And in conclusion, every chapter should have the right structure, proofread, of course, very important. And of course, when you're ending the chapter, you should have a good summary or concluding section. Okie doke. Thank you, guys. On that note, if you have any questions, please leave it in the comment section. If you haven't subscribed and you think this is useful content, please do share with your friends. And I wish you all the best. Go get an A. Because right here in Florence Gold Institute, we start from excellence. Bye-bye. Thanks.